The cameras loved them, the crowds worshipped them, but behind the studio gates, something dark lived inside these stars. They smiled for posters, they cried fake tears on screen, but in real life, they felt nothing for anyone but themselves. Directors begged, co-stars broke, families shattered. These 10 old Hollywood icons were not just difficult, they were dangerous. And Hollywood protected every single one of them. Until now. Number 10, John Barrymore. He was called the Great Profile. His face was sculpted like a Roman emperor. His voice could fill any theater. Audiences in the 1920s and 1930s thought he was a god. But John Barrymore treated people like furniture. He forgot co-stars' names on purpose, not because his memory was bad, because he did not think they mattered. On the set of Grand Hotel in 1932, he reportedly ignored Greta Garbo between takes entirely, not out of shyness, out of contempt. His wives suffered most. He married 4 times. Each woman entered his life full of hope. Each one left damaged. His third wife, actress Dolores Costello, described living with him as surviving a storm every single day. He controlled her career. He mocked her intelligence. He made her feel small while he stood tall. Barrymore was also heavily intoxicated for much of his later career, but even sober, people close to him said the cruelty never left. It was just quieter. His son, John Drew Barrymore, grew up fatherless in all the ways that mattered. John Sr. showed up. He just never truly arrived. When Barrymore died in 1942, some in Hollywood felt relief before they felt grief. Number 9. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead was electric. She walked into a room and every head turned. She was bold. She was loud. She was endlessly entertaining. She was also a master at making people feel worthless. Bankhead used charm like a weapon. She would build someone up, a young actress, a nervous director, a new writer, and then cut them down the moment they relaxed. Former co-star Estelle Winwood once said that Tallulah's compliments always had a blade hidden inside them. On stage in the 1930s and 1940s, Bankhead demanded total attention from every person in the building. If she felt she was not the center of the universe, things got ugly fast. She fired assistants without reason. She dismissed directors mid-conversation. She once threw a full script at a stage manager because she disagreed with a lighting choice. Her personal relationships were a collection of ruins. People orbited her. They never stood beside her as equals. She did not allow it. Tallulah Bankhead did not want partners. She wanted mirrors. Number 8. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn swung from ropes on screen. He saved kingdoms. He kissed heroin. He was the ultimate golden age adventurer. Off-screen, he was a predator with a charming smile. Flynn's narcissism was wrapped in charisma. That made it more dangerous. People wanted to believe in him. That desire made them blind. His 1942 trial, where he faced accusations involving extremely young girls, exposed a man who viewed others as objects created for his pleasure. He was acquitted. Hollywood rushed to protect him. On film sets, Flynn's behavior was legendary for all the wrong reasons. On The Adventures of Robin Hood in 1938, crew members reported that Flynn cared about one thing during production: how he looked in each scene. Not the story, not his co-stars, just Flynn. Olivia de Havilland, who starred alongside him in multiple films, later described working with him as exhausting. She said his ego consumed every room he entered. His son, Sean Flynn, grew up desperately seeking a father who was never truly there. Sean later disappeared in Cambodia in 1970 during the Vietnam War era. Some who knew both men said Sean spent his whole life chasing a ghost. Errol Flynn left a beautiful filmography. He also left a trail of broken people. Number 7. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford climbed from poverty to the top of Hollywood. That story should have made her compassionate. It made her harder. Crawford was obsessed with control. Her image, her films, her household. Everything had to be perfect. And perfect meant her way, always, on the set of Mildred Pierce in 1945. Director Michael Curtiz reportedly had a difficult working relationship with Crawford. She challenged decisions constantly. She made clear she believed her instincts were superior. Curtiz was an experienced director. Crawford made him feel like an employee. But the darkest story surrounds her family. Her adopted daughter, Christina Crawford, published Mommy Dearest in 1978. The book described years of emotional cruelty, wire hangers, midnight cleanings, punishment that made no sense. Joan Crawford, the woman America called glamorous, allegedly terrorized her own children behind closed doors. Crawford's narcissism showed in smaller ways, too. She reportedly kept photographs of herself visible in every room of her house, not as decoration, but as a daily reminder of who held power. Former MGM colleagues described a woman who treated kindness as weakness. She viewed every other actress as a competitor to be destroyed, not a peer to be respected. When Bette Davis heard that Crawford had died in 1977, Davis reportedly said, "You should never say bad things about the dead. Only good. Joan Crawford is dead." Good. Number 6. Orson Welles. Orson Welles was a genius. He knew it. He made sure everyone else knew it too. Citizen Kane in 1941 changed cinema forever. Welles was only 25 years old. That kind of success at that age does something to a person. For Welles, it confirmed what he already believed, that he was above ordinary rules. He was brutal to collaborators. He took credit generously and shared it almost never. Herman J. Mankiewicz Co. wrote the screenplay for Citizen Kane. The battle over credit became one of Hollywood's ugliest disputes. Mankiewicz had to fight for his own name on his own work. Welles moved through relationships and projects like a hurricane. He married actress Rita Hayworth in 1943. Hayworth later said that Welles made her feel like a prop in his story, not a partner in her own life. She was one of the most beautiful women in the world. Around Welles, she often felt invisible. Collaborators on later films described the exhaustion of working with him. He changed plans without warning. He demanded sacrifices from others. He rarely sacrificed himself. Actor Robert Shaw once said that working with Orson Welles was like being trapped in someone else's dream. You had no control. You just survived it. Number 5. Bette Davis. Bette Davis fought for her career with real courage. She sued Warner Bros. In 1936 when they tried to control her. She demanded better roles. She refused to be a passive starlet. All of that was brave and real, and also conveniently served her own interests perfectly. Davis was a force of nature on set. That force destroyed people regularly. Director Robert Aldrich, who worked with Davis on Whatever Happened to Baby Jane in 1962, described managing her as a full-time job, separate from actually directing the film. Her co-star in that same film was Joan Crawford. The war between them became Hollywood legend. Davis reportedly kicked Crawford during a scene. Hard, deliberately, Crawford then wore a weighted belt during a scene where Davis had to drag her across the floor, making the shot as physically punishing as possible. 2 narcissists, 1 film set. It was a disaster dressed as a movie. But away from Crawford, Davis left other wreckage. Her daughter, B.D. Hyman, published a memoir in 1985 titled My Mother's Keeper. Like Christina Crawford's book, it described a childhood ruled by one person's needs, moods, and ego. Davis was publicly furious. She felt betrayed. The idea that she had caused pain seemed genuinely impossible for her to accept. Number 4. Charlie Chaplin. The world loved Charlie Chaplin. The little tramp made them laugh. He made them cry. He seemed to carry the pain of the whole world on his small, shuffling shoulders. He felt very little of other people's pain in return. Chaplin's relationships with women were disturbing patterns, not isolated mistakes. He married 4 times. His first wife, Mildred Harris, was 16 years old when they married in 1918. Chaplin was 29. His second wife, Leda Gray, was 16 when their relationship began. She was 15 when they met on set. These were not love stories. These were a powerful man selecting girls he could mold and control. Chaplin's genius was real. The Kid in 1921, City Lights in 1931, Modern Times in 1936. The art was extraordinary. But behind the art lived a man who saw young women as extensions of his own creative vision, characters he could write, direct, and discard. His son, Charles Chaplin Jr., wrote a memoir describing a father who was emotionally distant, demanding, and impossible to truly reach. Charlie Chaplin spent decades depicting human vulnerability on screen. He guarded his own heart like a fortress. Number 3. Cecil B. DeMille. Cecil B. DeMille did not star in movies. He controlled them. As one of Hollywood's most powerful directors and producers, DeMille had authority that most actors could only dream of. He used that authority to make people suffer. On the set of The 10 Commandments in 1956, DeMille was 74 years old and physically fragile, but his ego was fully intact. Crew members described an atmosphere of fear. DeMille spoke to people, grown professionals, the way a cruel teacher speaks to a misbehaving child. Public humiliation was his preferred management tool. Actor Henry Wilcoxon worked with DeMille across multiple decades. He described a man who genuinely believed his vision was more important than any human being involved in achieving it. Extras reported being kept in punishing conditions during massive crowd scenes. Comfort was irrelevant to DeMille. The shot was everything. Earlier, on the 1923 version of the 10 Commandments, hundreds of workers labored in brutal desert conditions. Injuries were reported. DeMille's response, according to historical accounts, was focused almost entirely on protecting the production schedule. His personal relationships mirrored his professional ones. DeMille maintained a long affair while married. He kept separate lives in separate compartments. The people in those compartments were not people to him. They were arrangements. Number 2. Louis B. Mayer. Louis B. Mayer never appeared on screen. He did not need to. He owned the screen. As head of MGM from the 1920s through 1951, Mayer controlled the lives of some of the most famous humans who ever lived. He was catastrophically cruel with that power. Mayer put Judy Garland on diet pills when she was 16 years old. He called her my little hunchback because she was not thin enough for his standards. Garland spent the rest of her life battling demons, prescription pills, insomnia, anxiety that arguably began the day she walked into MGM as a child. He controlled how stars dressed, who they dated, what they said in public. MGM stars signed contracts that gave Mayer authority over their entire public existence. When actress Hedy Lamarr refused certain roles, the punishment was swift and professional. When stars stepped out of line, Mayer cut their films, damaged their reputations, or simply made them disappear from the public eye. Mayer reportedly cried in meetings, real tears, performed on demand to manipulate directors and actors into agreements. Former MGM director Clarence Brown described Mayer's tears as the most effective weapon in Hollywood. They made people feel guilty for having legitimate complaints. He did not love the stars. He loved what the stars produced. There is a difference. Mayer understood that difference perfectly. Number 1. Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes owned airlines, film studios, and eventually his own mind. Or lost it, rather, but before the paranoia fully consumed him. Hughes was a narcissist operating at maximum scale. He produced Hell's Angels in 1930. He directed and controlled every frame obsessively. Actress Jean Harlow's contract with Hughes was essentially ownership. He controlled her public appearances, her interviews, her image. Harlow described feeling like a product being managed, not a person being supported. Hughes pursued women the way he pursued aircraft contracts, as acquisition targets. He dated or controlled Katharine Hepburn, Ava Gardner, Lana Turner, and dozens of others. Some describe the relationships as exciting at first. Obsessive attention can feel like love when you are young and naive. But Hughes's attention was never about the women. It was about possession. His treatment of film crews was legendary for its wastefulness and disregard. On The Outlaw in 1943, production stretched years beyond schedule because Hughes's demands were impossible to satisfy. Crew members lost work on other films. Their families suffered financially. Hughes never noticed. He was focused on the exact angle of Jane Russell's costume. As Hughes descended into severe mental illness in his later years, some felt pity. The man who had everything and still needed to own everyone around him just to feel complete. That man made his choices freely. He made them at other people's expense. 10 names. 10 trails of damage. But the truth is bigger than 10 people. The Golden Age studio system built these monsters. It handed them power, protected their secrets, and silenced every victim. Studios needed stars more than they needed justice. So, justice never came. These people smiled from magazine covers while the people around them quietly broke apart. Hollywood wanted this buried. We dug it up. Subscribe to Golden Era History, because the truth does not disappear. It just waits for someone brave enough to tell it.